Is that all good?
All good. We'll start. Yeah.
Fab. Thank you for coming and joining me, especially when there's such great sessions to choose from. I really appreciate you all being here with me. My name's Leyla Palmer. I'm Head of Professional Learning and Talent at Windsor Academy Trust.
Sorry, I'll be back in a second. I think I'll put my phone down.
No worries, no worries. You pop back in. And I'm here today to talk to you about our approach to leadership development, and it's very much a new approach that we've introduced just over this last year that we've called what makes a WAT leader. So what makes a Windsor Academy Trust leader, looking at transforming our schools through developing those performing leaders in school, across our schools. And this work that's come about has been through collaboration with Anne-Marie Dogood. So Anne-Marie Dogood is the creator of the World Education Summit, or the founder of the World Education Summit. So we've been doing a lot of work with her over the last 12 months, looking at how we can really start to set up systems and processes that really enable our leaders to flourish across all of our schools. And I really want to share with you our approach to what we've done and the lessons that we've learned, what we've taken from that. So we've got this great passion across our trust for professional development and really developing our staff. And so we've really tried to hone that focus over the last 12 months, specifically around the area of leadership development. So in this session, I'm going to speak to you a little bit about our trust in general and what we stand for, what's our culture, why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and then I'm going to move on to a bit more specifics around this particular programme, about the what makes a what leader, and why that was introduced and how it works. And I'm going to finish off by sharing with you all some feedback around what impacts that we feel that it's having already, and some of the lessons that we've learned from going through this. So I will get started with the why behind, so a bit of information about our trust and the why behind what we do. So our moral purpose there. And we always, when we're talking about our trust, think about the Simon Sinek and the golden circles, and really focusing on at the core of what we do, and making sure that our culture across our trust is really strong. So and when we talk about the why, we always talk about unlocking the academic and personal potential of our students. So when we're talking about that academic potential, we're linking to developing our young people to be really great learners, to embrace that love of learning, and to be really enthusiastic learners. And then thinking about how we can support our young people to be those great enthusiastic learners. And then on the other side, we've got the personal potential of our learners. So really how we develop the character in our young people, how we develop them to be young people that we're proud to go out to our communities, really have a great understanding of who they are and what they stand for, and to be contributors to society. So bearing that in mind, we aim to equip our students with both those sets of skills, the learner skills, the skills around character, to really help them to thrive and to, as we say, to reach the top of the mountain. So when I come on to the how then, about what we do, it comes down to our core values. And so here we've got our core values that run through everything that we do, whether it's the staff that work with us in our schools and with the learners. We really promote and live these core values. So the first one there, about pride in excellence, really resonates with what Sonia's just been talking about there, about an ethic of excellence, making sure that our staff and our young people really really make sure that they have pride in everything that they do. We have the highest standards of our students and of our learners, and I think a lot of this, when we're talking about these culture elements here, we're trying to ensure that we have a culture of pride and excellence across all of our schools. Respect is really important to us, you know, that we all respect each other. Responsibility, so having responsibility for ourselves and for others and our wider community. Collaboration is very much at the heart of what we do as well. So it matters deeply to us that we are building a trust where students learn how to collaborate, but more specifically that teachers and leaders collaborate and work together so that we can share collective wisdom. And we aim to be bold and innovative as well, to push boundaries, to think outside the box, and really not just accept what perhaps has always gone before. And then also thinking about the how again, we've got these core elements here about what makes what. So what makes us who we are, and very much our what approach. So we've got these core elements here about alignment through collaboration, the what way. So essentially we've got a backbone, a structure to everything that we do. So we're very keen on making sure that we codify everything that we do. So there's that real clarity around our approaches. So we've got codified approaches to professional development, to teaching and learning, to assessment, to curriculum. And in no way is that a straitjacket, but more of a scaffold and a support for staff to make sure that we're all working together on the same path. So it's very important to us, like I said at the start, professional development is really something that we're very passionate about, and we aim to inspire and develop people at all levels of the organisation and continuously. It comes back to that Dylan Williams quote, doesn't it, about, you know, that we've just had shared with us about every teacher can improve, and not because they're not good enough, but because we can all be that little bit better. And we really try to make sure we all embrace that culture and that concept around inspiring and developing people. Again, we're really big fans of making sure that everything we do is grounded in research. You know, we stand on the shoulders of giants and we don't just make things up in the shower. And again, bringing back to what Sonia shared with us earlier about making sure that everything we do is linked to that. What are those best bets that are out there? We aim to keep things simple and communicate clearly, and to over-communicate as well. You know, if anything's going to stick with our young people, with our staff, it's so important to us that we make sure that the message is clear and that we continuously over-communicate. And then finally, we've got the point on here about civic and system leadership. So it's very important to us that we're not just contributing to the lives of the young people in our schools, but also contributing on a wider scale. So civically within the communities that we serve, and contributing wider to the school education system as well. So here it is summed up exactly what we aim to do. So to develop high-performing schools that raise aspirations, inspire learning, build character and cultural capital, power social mobility. So we have a number of our schools that are in areas of high deprivation and in what the DFE refer to as priority education investment areas. So it's so important for us that we're able to power that social mobility and enable all our students across all of our schools to really thrive. And like I said, that civic responsibility is critical here, about, you know, making sure our students not just are great academic learners, but, you know, go out with great character to be able to make a change to the communities that they live in and the rest of the world. So to sum up a little bit about our Windsor Academy Trust family and our schools within our trust. So we've got 9 schools currently, made up of both primary and secondary schools. We've got over 1,000 staff serving 7,000 children, and a very much a growing trust. So we've got a new free school opening in Sandwell, Windsor Academy in September, which is really exciting for us, and further schools looking to join us in the next academic year as well. So really exciting times for us. I also want to share with you a bit of an overview of our strategy within our trust, and it really very much links to our guiding star, why we do what we do. The intention there to unlock the academic and personal potential of all our students. And the diagram here is really representative of how are we going to achieve that. Through running through the rocket ship there, we've got our core values that I spoke about, the how we do what we do. And the what really relates to our strategic 5 big moves. So we've got these big moves, these areas that we work on in our strategy across all of our schools to ensure that we can make sure our young people achieve their academic and personal potential. So we've got the first big move is around creating high-performing schools, all of our schools, ensuring that they're high-performing schools. The second one there is the one that I'm really going to focus on today, is talking about staff talent. How do we build and grow and develop our staff talent, with a real focus today on leadership development. And then we've got our other 5 big moves that we're focusing on. Civic leadership, so again contributing to the wider communities, sustainability, how we can make the world a better place for future generations, and that what family reach, so again about contributing to the wider system, as the wider education system, as well as just our own school. So a lot of what we do is about what we do. What I'm speaking to you here about now is about, you know, contributing not just to our own schools, to our own young people, to our own leaders, but serving the education system, the wider education system. And then we've got our enablers that help power up those 5 big moves. So really, I said I'm going to focus today on how we develop staff with that focus around leadership development, and it is so important to us, and that's why it's one of our 5 big moves, why in our next 5 years the strategy for us is focused around those 5 big moves, with building staff talent as one of those core elements. So to tell you a little bit about our overview of what we do in regards to building staff talent, everything that we do professional development wise, it comes under the umbrella of our newly launched Windsor Academy Trust Talent Institute, which is the area that I oversee. And I'll start with, you know, I've only been in this role of professional development for the last few years, but Windsor Academy Trust have been known for more than a decade now, have been really focused around professional development, so much so that we've been featured in Sir David Carter's book about leading Academy Trust, why some fail but most don't, in chapter 4 in there as a case study around how to make your school or your workplace a great place for people to want to work. We've also got on here our professional learning and talent codified approach. So I spoke to you earlier about alignment through collaboration and alignment through the what way. So saying about how we have a central backbone and codified approaches for everything that we do. And so we've really exemplified here what it is that we do around professional development and what opportunities our staff have access to. And again, that's all grounded in research, so you can see that we've made sure that all of our programmes and our professional development offer is built upon core guiding principles and those CPL mechanisms that we know make effective professional development. Staff wellbeing is also really, really important to us, so we've committed to the DFE's wellbeing charter, and then you can see at the top we've got the golden thread there. So we do offer to all of our schools the golden thread of professional development, so right through from starting with initial teacher education placements. We offer the early career framework, and we deliver all of the national professional qualifications as well through in collaboration with the Teacher Development Trust. And then it links on to this bottom diagram here, which is what really I wanted to share with you today, which is about our approach to leadership development, our newly found approach to leadership development. You might ask the question about if we deliver the national professional qualifications, and we've got in there, you know, the MPQ in senior leadership, the MPQ in headship, those leaders, the specialist leadership MPQ. So why the need for developing anything further? And that's really what I want to explore with you today. Why have we brought in our own approach to leadership development as such? And that leads me on to what we already offer. So we've got a clear route of succession planning for our staff. You know, it's made very explicit how you can progress, how you can develop your careers, whether it be in teaching or into leadership in schools. And the journey for leaders or for aspirant leaders within our trust starts with, we offer an aspiring middle leaders programme that we deliver internally and offer out to other schools as well. So wider. We also, like I said, deliver the national professional qualifications, grounded in research, obviously, and then also offer educational leadership master's degrees in conjunction with the University of Birmingham as well. So we already have a clear route of leadership progression for our teachers. But what we found was we thought there's something that's still missing. You know, a lot of what we've already got here is the research that's available out there, the theory about leadership. What we wanted to do was effectively close a gap that we felt that we had around building leaders to lead in a way that's aligned with our culture. So culture is really important to us. So it was about what's so important to us that we want to make sure all our leaders have an aligned way of leading, you know, really with that, the core of our culture and the why we do and the how we do what we do built into a leadership structure. So it's really about empowering our leaders to lead in a way that's really well aligned to our core values and to our culture across our trust. So thinking about the why have we developed this programme a little bit further. So it's how we can contribute on numerous levels to leadership development. So if I'll start at the bottom about leaders within our schools. We want to be able to make sure that leaders are able to identify and validate their own areas of strength and their areas that they want to develop in. Give them a voice and control over their own leadership development. And we want to also develop them and their coaching skills so that our leaders can coach others into how to be great leaders, and that they can also be coached. We have a really strong ethos across our trust with teachers as being open to coaching and, you know, focused around instructional coaching. So we also want to embrace that approach with our leaders as well. It's not just about being coached in teaching. We want to have a really strong approach to leadership coaching as well. And then wider across our WAT family, across all of our schools, what we wanted to do is develop this common language of leadership learning. So when we're talking about how we lead, it's really clear to all of us. We also wanted to produce a way of having an at-a-glance summary of, in terms of the leadership skills and knowledge that we found important to us, we wanted to be able to identify at a glance across our trust where the areas of strength were and where the areas of development were. And then that way we could really tailor our professional development to those areas of development that were consistent across all of our schools. And so the system that we've put in place really aims to provide us with that summary. And also as a mechanism to support and develop talent. So we've got lots of talent development opportunities and routes in what we do. But this one is really that mechanism for specifically leadership, developing leadership talent. And then wider, like I said, we always think about our civic contribution and the reach that we're making. So it's about contributing to the wider education system and, you know, developing effective school leaders, not just for our own schools, but, you know, if they go on to move on to other schools, that we're contributing to the wider system there too. So these are some of the areas that we really wanted to make sure we were addressing within the programme. So we wanted to make sure again that culture was key. That quote by Peter Drucker really springs to mind about, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay, we've got a really well-defined strategy about what we want to do as a trust, but how are we continuing building a culture or creating a culture where leaders can really flourish in our schools? and, you know, having an approach that's really enabling, really empowering, that's developmental, that really prepares leaders to deal with those difficult challenges of school leadership that they all face. And really to provide our leaders with the great potential and possibilities. So, you know, as I spoke to earlier about bringing in that consistency of our approach to leadership, helping to support, develop talent, and offering bespoke CPL. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we're doing each of these things as I move through. And I keep showing up this diagram here. Okay, and this diagram is what I'm going to come on to about the framework that we've put in place for the What Makes a What Leader program and the What Makes a What Leader approach. So what is the framework? What we did, how we started off on this journey was myself, members of the executive central team at the Trust, all came together with Anne-Marie Dogood, who's, like I said, the creator of the World Education Summit. She's very much a school leadership expert, and she came in to work with us over a number of days to try and develop a leadership framework that was core to us, that was really embedded in our values and really designed in a way that was going to make sure that the culture of our trust was key in everything we do when we're thinking about how we're developing our leaders. So we spent a few days thrashing out what are the essential elements that we want to develop our leaders in, and we came up with this framework. So at the core of the underpinning of the framework is around the What Leadership Foundations, the why and the how and the what that we do, that I've shared with you already. And then we've got two elements that are made up there in the framework of leader and leading. So when we're talking about leader, we're talking about, you know, what kind of leaders do we want our leaders to be? So individually, you know, we want them to be kind, to be brave, to have drive and ambition, to have high expectations of others and of themselves, and to be really open to learn. And then to consider the other element about how we lead others. So how we create a sense of collective efficacy, how we really enable impact in others, how we make sure that we know our staff really well and know how to grow and develop staff, how we can make sure that we nurture high performing teams, and how we reach beyond WAT, so reach into the other schools and support on a more civic and system level. And those were the things that, you know, we spent a lot of time coming up with. What are the things that matter to us most, and the way that we want to lead? It wasn't, you know, we just picked out of anywhere. It wasn't picked out of textbooks or research. It was very much about us and our trust and what matters most to us. And once we'd come up with the framework, we then worked at creating the criteria. What do we mean by, for example, being open to learn? What do we mean by nurturing high-performing teams? Or what do we mean by being kind? So we came up with very clear descriptors about what does that look like then in practice, and how would we do that? So we've got the descriptors, and then we've got keywords and qualities on the right-hand side. So we developed those as a team together. Now, I said about alignment through collaboration earlier. So what was key was this wasn't just something that was top-down, that was designed by the central team and then inflicted upon the rest of the leaders across our schools. So we brought all the senior leaders together from all of our schools for our first session, where we worked on feedback and collaboration on what we'd designed. So it was this changeable structure that we'd set up and these changeable ideas. So all the senior leaders contributed their thoughts and their feelings, and we went back and made amendments to this, made amendments to the criteria based on what they all told us. And we then updated all the criteria, and then what we wanted to do was make sure we created an online enabling tool, so a tool that was going to make this whole framework usable, and not just something that's written on a piece of paper. So I'm going to talk to you about that enabling leadership process and the enabling tool that we created. So how are we going to actually now use this framework? So the structure of what happens with the framework is we set up an online Google form system that was linked into various other IT elements, and staff were, the leaders in our school, the senior leaders in our schools, were all trained on how to conduct a self-review using that framework and using those criteria. So there was and I'll show you examples of what the tool looked like. And they carried out a self-review. So they worked through each of those leadership criteria and rated themselves in terms of where their strengths were and what, perhaps the areas that they needed to develop. And that was then input into the system, and a report was generated that's then sent out to that person themselves and to their leadership coach. So we made sure that every leader had a coach that was allocated to them, and in nearly all cases that was also their line manager. And we wanted to follow the line management structure because we know they already have got relationships there, they already meet regularly, so this wasn't going to be something that was an add-on, it was something that can be built into what's already being done in terms of working with our leaders. And then the next step is probably the most important stage in this. It's then about not just completing a survey and reviewing where you're at, but what do you then do with it? And like I say, coaching is very important to us, and especially with teachers, so we wanted to bring that coaching culture into the leadership development too. So what then happens is each leader meets with their coach and looks through the report that's been generated, and they have a coaching conversation and they agree on the levels that had been input. So it might be that through that coaching conversation, some leaders were, you're being too hard on yourself, you're far better at doing this. And it might be that the coach draws out more specifically areas that they really need to work on that perhaps they might have missed or might not be aware of. And it's really, it's a dialogical approach where they come together, much like in instructional coaching with teaching, and they agree, okay, what are your strengths and what are those areas for development? And then what's provided to them on the back of that is some suggestions. What do I think what elements of professional development can help you in the areas that we've identified? So it might be that we want you to engage in Where's There for the World Education Summit. All of our senior leaders, we've invested heavily in purchasing tickets for that World Education Summit for. So there's, I think, over 400 speakers that are available and different sessions available on there. So it's about directing the leaders to the ones the sessions that they think can help them most in the areas that they can develop in. It might be suggesting to develop further using one of the MPQs, and lots of other CPL suggestions. And this is something that we're continuously working on developing as well, the menu of offering for CPL. So we've said to our coaches, to our leaders that are coaching others, to think of the books that have really helped to change your practice, to think of other professional development that you've engaged in that can help others as well. And that's making up our menu of CPL options that they can suggest to other leaders. And then what's really important is to give the leaders time to start to implement and to take part in the professional development that we've offered. Now, what's also really important is I've put there about bespoke and group CPL. So yes, each of our leaders are going to be directed towards CPL that's bespoke to them. But we're also, with our overview that I'm going to show you a little bit about, able to then identify, like I said, the areas that are consistently across all of our schools we feel like we really need to work on. And that enables the likes of myself and other leaders in our trust to put on CPL sessions really at whole groups of staff that we feel that might be relevant to. And giving them time to implement their learning into their day-to-day practice. And then further on down the line, we aim to, and we're not at this point yet, so we're just at the point on our journey in this where Our leaders have had their self-review, they've had their coaching conversations, they've come up with an agreed level for each of their areas, and they're implementing their learning now. So we haven't got to the stage yet where a review, a progress review has happened. So that's due to happen at some point in this summer term, where all leaders are going to be asked to go back to that tool that we've created and look at and say, okay, how have you progressed then? What areas do you still need to work on? And I've got here further implementation and ongoing coaching conversation. So I mentioned about the structure that we've set up is with line managers, because we don't want this to just be one-off things that are done at 3 points in the year. We want to make sure that we're building this coaching culture with all of our leaders, where they can have continuous coaching conversations with their line manager or their coach through their line manager meetings. So that's an overview of the structure that we've set up. And although they're pretty small to see, I just wanted to give you an overview of the system that we've created to help support the framework that we've set up. So there's a Google form analysis, and we use the same Google form to do the self-review, to do the agreed review, and to do that progress review. There's just different selections that the leaders make. And so they can read the criteria and judge themselves on each of the areas on a scale of 1 to 4, from great developmental need through to 4 really thriving and very competent in that area. That then creates the report that I spoke about, that's emailed automatically as soon as the form is submitted to the leader and to their coach. And what's automated is the link to the next stage. So the next stage, so they both get a link to the agreed review form to then complete when they meet together. So it's very much automated for ease of use. And at every stage, there is a summary and a report that's generated that gets sent to both. And I explained that we wanted to be able to have an at-a-glance summary of the areas of strength and areas for development. So that feeds into an overview dashboard. And we've got one for each school, and we've got one central one as well that shows across our trust. So the head teachers in each school have got their own access to their own dashboard, so they can see for their school, okay, what are the areas that we need to focus on for leadership development in our school. And I did want to share with you as well a little bit, okay, we're still in the early stages of this journey, but what's the experience so far of those that have taken part in this, and what are some of the lessons that have been learned? So it's really important that we model this from the top. And so our executive team were the ones that effectively started this. They were coached by our CEO, first of all. So I'm going to just share with you a few minutes of their thoughts on how this is working so far. And they both spoke at the World Education Summit about this. So I'm going to play it from here so you can hear their thoughts that were recorded previously.
Thank you, Leyla. I'm going to start by talking about how it feels to be coached a little bit. And as Leyla said, we've gone through the process collaboratively, and as a family, going through the descriptors and the models that we put together. So we sort of knew what we were going into in being coached in those first sort of stages of developing this. But I think, without a doubt, for me, this is the deepest professional discussion I'd ever had. And I emerged from that discussion and remember quite clearly driving home feeling like I've developed a real deeper understanding of myself as a leader. I think I'd asked myself questions I'd really not fully considered before, which was curious because it's the coach that asks those questions, but it very much feels like, because of the way that the system works, feels like you're questioning yourself. It's a really safe space to explore who you are as a leader and your leadership. And it made me really reflect driving away. Why did that feel like it did? I've been through lots of other coaching sections before and all sorts of professional development activities. I think my reflections on being coached were that the framework is really powerful in the sense that it focuses not just on what you do, but who you are as a leader. And looking at both those things, I think, takes us well beyond just what we're doing into why we are doing what we're doing, and asking ourselves some really deep questions all about that, and what motivates us as a leader, and how that then reflects on how that plays out in our leadership activities. I think also really powerful that the sense as you're being coached, that the content of the framework in terms of how we've co-produced it means that it deeply meets our values already. And we already feel invested in those things like kindness and openness to learn, and bravery and drive. So they're already things that we've agreed were phenomenally important to us as leaders, and to deeply evaluate where you are on those scales was really good, but also quite challenging. So in terms of some of the questions that were posed during the coaching conversation around, okay, so could you give me an example of that? Is there a better example of that? Taking those surface concepts to quite a deep level, while having those two views of yourself as a leader and of leading. And I think key for me, walking away from my coaching, that initial coaching conversation, was I felt like I'd discovered where I needed to go next. I'd really quite through the care that was taken through the process, discovered that I needed to go in terms of my learning in a slightly new direction, to take me into spaces that I'd never really explored before, and that was quite emotional in some ways. And Matt, I'm going to hand over to you just for your sort of thoughts around being coached.
Yeah, thanks Dan, and wholeheartedly agree with your reflections, having been in that privileged position of being coached as well. And you know, one of the things that struck me was how different this felt from the appraisal process. And of course, the appraisal process is rewarding and developmental and vitally important, but the coaching within the context of our culture enabled more of a personal touch. Just hearing Dan talk there, those are some of the things that really resonated with me, that sort of personal touch and a real deeper thought about professional strengths and priorities. I know that others across the organisation have felt the same, and I'm going to read out to you now a quote from one of our coachees. This coachee emailed this to one of our senior leaders who was a coach, and this quote is as follows: "Thank you for this afternoon. I really value what you've asked and what you said and how you helped me think and reflect. Just wanted to let you know how positive it made me feel. Thank you. I really mean it and appreciate you and your time." Just hearing that quote back and seeing that quote previously across the organisation, it's been a sort of genuine feeling that the coaching has created a safe and positive space to deeply reflect about who you are as a leader, but also, you know, a message underneath it that your development really matters. So I'm
going to stop it there because it does go on a little bit longer. But I think that point that I've ended on there, you know, giving the time for leaders to feel like they've got the opportunity to really have that time with someone that's really focused around them. How often does that really happen in our schools? And I think it was someone I heard, Maggie Farrar, talk about, you know, when we're worn down and we're tired, often we don't actually need a rest. What we need is wholeheartedness, she talks about. And I think that really resonates with me because, you know, doing this and investing the time in our leaders really goes to show that, and really helps them bring back that wholeheartedness into their role and into their lives. So I'm going to finish on that because I know time-wise we're running out. There's a little bit more that I did want to share, but if there are any questions, feel free to ask away before we finish up.
The only thing that I keep thinking, because I think it's like amazing, but how did you address situations where some of the senior leaders, the line managers that were having the coaching conversations, maybe weren't as skilled or weren't as able to conduct those conversations in that positive way that you would need it to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps what I missed out when I was talking about the process there, so thank you for that question, is I spoke about how all the senior leaders came together for one session where we co-constructed the framework and the criteria. The second session that we delivered, where all the senior leaders came together again for the second time, was exactly that, was training on what makes an effective coaching conversation. And we created a document of coaching prompts. So for each criteria, the kinds of questions that you might be asking in that area. And myself and Anne-Marie Dogood, in front of all the senior leaders, modelled what a poor coaching conversation might look like and what a really good coaching conversation might look like. And you know, that was that whole session together was a few hours long, so it was really delving in depth with them. How can you make these coaching conversations as effective as possible? So thanks for that question. Any other thoughts or questions from anyone? If not, thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.